Welcome to the top 5 video for week 4. In this video series, I review the top 5 key ideas that are explored in each week of the course through the readings, modules, and activities. For each key point, I review the content in the course that is most relevant. All right, let's get started. First key idea: a historical lack of ethical concern for human life resulting in harm and atrocities is the impetus for ethical frameworks in nursing and research. Historical events have shaped how we treat human participants involved in research. The violations of moral principles that have led to codes of ethics for research are not in the distant past. Key events include Nazi medical experiments in the 1930s and 40s. The Nazi research program used prisoners of war and racial enemies in medical experiments. The studies were unethical not only because they exposed people to harm, but also because subjects could not refuse participation. A more recent example is the Tuskegee syphilis study, sponsored by the U.S. Public Health Service, which investigated the effects of syphilis among 400 poor African American men between 1932 and 1972. Among other ethical and amoral actions, the researchers withheld treatment when it became available and continued to observe the effects of advanced syphilis on the human body. Despite codes of ethics, there are modern-day examples of these violations, such as research on the health of Indigenous Canadians. Refer to activity number 1 in the module for week 4 for an example. There are various codes of ethics in response to human rights violations. A code of ethics is a guide of principles designed to help professionals conduct themselves and their practice with integrity and honesty. Most disciplines, such as nursing, have their code of ethics. Governments have established rules and regulations to protect research participants. The Belmont Report of 1978 has provided a model for many guidelines, including those identified here in Canada. Key idea number 2. The Belmont Report articulated 3 primary ethical principles which form the foundation for today's standards of ethical research conduct: beneficence, respect for human dignity, and justice. The textbook reading and the course learning module for week 4 provide detailed overviews of these principles and their elements. Let's quickly review the 3 principles. Beneficence imposes a duty on researchers to minimize harm and maximize benefits. Human research should intend to produce benefits for participants or, more typically, for others. Respect for human dignity. This principle includes the right to self-determination and the right to full disclosure. Justice includes participants' rights to fair treatment and their right to privacy. The number 3 key idea for week 4: nurses must understand the procedures researchers use to adhere to ethical principles so they can critique the ethical aspects of a study. The textbook chapter reading for week 4 highlights these procedures. The treatment of vulnerable groups in research is a particular topic to which researchers and those using evidence should pay attention to. Vulnerable people may be incapable of giving full informed consent, for example, cognitively impaired people, or at high risk of unintended side effects, for example, pregnant women. Nurses should pay particular attention to the ethical dimensions of a study when vulnerable people are involved. Anyone, depending on the circumstances and the conditions of the research study, may become vulnerable. However, groups of individuals may be considered vulnerable because of inherent characteristics. These include children, mentally or emotionally disabled people, terminally ill people, and pregnant women. Number 4, nursing standards, codes of ethics, and research standards may be at odds with each other, resulting in ethical issues. Nursing obligations to clients, including caring, preventing harm, protecting dignity, and advocacy roles in defense of patient rights, may be at odds when viewing these same clients as subjects in nursing research. Misconduct on the part of the nurse researcher is a concern. Ethical misconduct can take many forms, such as fraud, deceit, and unprofessional conduct. However, the ethical issues most cited in conducting research for nurses involves informed consent, respect for client confidentiality and privacy, and beneficence. The last big idea for week 4, ethical dilemmas for nurse researchers may arise when participants' rights and study quality are in direct conflict. An ethical dilemma is a situation in which a difficult choice has to be made between two courses of action, either of which entails transgressing a moral principle. Research that violates ethical principles typically occurs because a researcher believes the knowledge is potentially beneficial in the long run. Wu describes several examples of when the desire for rigor conflicts with ethical considerations. An example of an ethical dilemma is when a nurse researcher must probe the psychological state of an individual at a vulnerable time to gain information that may help design effective resources to help address the issues the individuals in the study face. That's it. Another set of top 5s done. Check out the other videos in the series, and if you have any questions, please reach out to the professor for your section.